You're listening to the 49 Carats podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Happy New Year. Starting off the new year right with another edition of the 49 Carats podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, January 1st, 2024, and the vibes are already immaculate because the first day of the new year is a victory Monday for us 49er fans. Joining me to talk about the game as well as nominating our 49K Player of the Week, it's Weston. Weston, how you doing, man? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Steph. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, considering like what better way to kick off the new year than clinching number 1 seed, winning a football game, a little victory Monday action here, and we get to talk about it and get to celebrate it. And shout out to Miss Deb too, who just put through some comments up there. Happy New Year to her as well.
Yeah, everyone in the comments, everyone tuning in, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's after the fact, listening to this throughout the week, our audio listeners, appreciate all of you. You guys made 2023 awesome, and I know you guys are about to make 2024 awesome, and hopefully the 49ers can do the same. If recent events are any indication, I think they will. But Weston, I didn't really watch this game live, but I was checking, the score. I was checking Twitter to see what people were saying about the game. I ended up watching the game after the fact, like later in the evening, and watching it live. So I already had some of the, I guess, pretext of what people were saying about the game. So a couple things that I want to discuss that people said that I saw while following Twitter live as it was happening. Our defense is a problem. which after watching the game, I was like, are you guys sure? Like, they only gave up 10 points. Like, Are you guys okay? And then our offense, like, team is an issue. Kyle Shanahan, he cannot beat the Commanders. Why is this game so close? That was like, all the first half tweets that I read. But then watching it live, I was like, I waited for it to play out, right? Because I saw what people said. Then I had seen the final score, so I knew the 49ers pulled away at some point. And so, I don't know. I guess for me, it was kind of different watching after I knew what had happened, because I kind of feel like if I watched the game live, maybe I probably would have been a little upset that the score was so close going into halftime. But how were you kind of feeling watching the game?
Yeah, I think the overreactions of the first half are valid in some capacity, especially coming off of a loss where you felt like our team got steamrolled, by a superior opponent versus the Washington Commanders. But it was one of those things, Steph, like where you sat there and like, how I watch games, right? And I'm watching it live and I'm stressed no matter what the scenario is. I was pretty calm during this. I just felt like, nature was going to run its course and what was the better team was going to separate itself. But I also know that, like, yeah, I can understand the panic around the defense. There were moments when Washington was moving the ball a little bit, but still an NFL team. This is still they're the most dangerous of opponents, the ones that are playing for nothing with nothing to lose. They went from benching their quarterback to announcing Jacoby Brissett was going to be the starter, to him getting hurt during practice and having to go back to Sam Howell, Ron Rivera's probably last home game, all these things that you can throw in there that just make them dangerous, right? And I think that's what they were doing. They were just playing dangerous ball. They were rolling the dice that they wouldn't normally do. Caught the 49ers a little off guard, but when all said and done, it was like we've seen this story play out time and time again, where it's like the defense feels like it has first half struggles, right? And then they hit the reset button, and then everything settles down and comes back to reality. But I don't think the overreaction, it's typical of 49er fans for sure, but I don't think they weren't not warranted based on how, like, the first 22 minutes of this game like unfolded
at the time. I think it's just so funny how quickly those takes get cold, when you watch a game live, and it's so different. But Weston, what this game felt like, it felt like two teams and one team that no matter how they played expected to win. and the other team, no matter how they played, expecting to lose. Like, it just felt like a team that's battered and bruised, and the Commanders that expected to lose. Like, that's kind of what they've come to. And, they're, what were they, 4-11 going into this
4-11,
game?
yep.
So, and the 49ers, going into it, they felt like they could probably sleepwalk. It felt like they were sleepwalking in the first half. And you think about the Commanders having two starting corners out of this game. You think about them not having Jacoby Brissett in there, multiple offensive linemen missing. So you think in your head, oh, the 49ers probably going to be up like 20 points at halftime.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. But it's like, to me, it just looked like a team, the 49ers just looked like a team that, felt like they can just win this game no matter what. So they kind of just slow played it a little bit. It was light work for them.
Yep.
That's pretty locked in the second half. And they're like, all right, we're done messing around. Let's just put these guys to bed, kind of thing. That's how I saw it.
And I feel like that's by design too, right? I think one team, as you mentioned, she's not lying. I'm always panicking, Steph. You know how this goes. Did you guys is this like
I said,
cahoots against
if
me?
I was watching it live, I would have probably been like panicking a little bit
Yeah.
too.
But you could just tell the swagger walking onto the field. One team just was in their feels, ready to go win this game. The other one was like, we just want to survive 60 minutes of football. And you knew it was gonna come correct eventually. But I also think this was not, Kyle's or even Steve Wilkes most button up plans. I think they just kind of really felt like we're gonna win this game no matter what. So let's not put it all on tape, right? Like, who cares if we win the game by 2 points, 3 points, right? Like, the goal is get out of here with the win. Let's try to be a little injury free. Let's see, I don't think any of us really expected to walk away with the 1 seed after this week. We thought we were going to probably have to play for it in week 18. So let's focus on that, right? Like, against the division rival and a surging team right now, the Los Angeles Rams. And so I just don't think they put much on paper. And then early in this game, it was a little bit about execution. 49ers got down into the red zone. They just didn't do anything with it. It
Even
felt
late
like
in the
once they
game,
got inside the 10, that field got real tight for them, and they just couldn't create the space. We could talk more about this, but I think this might be a lingering problem for the team is they've gotten really good at explosive plays, right? 20, 25-yard plus touchdown plays when there's a lot of field and a lot of room for separation, but seemingly have been struggling inside the red zone. But I also, benefit of the doubt here, think that I don't think Kyle wanted to put anything on tape around any jet sweeps or, anything crazy, because that's the playoff bag, right? Where you're going to see that kind of in the red zone execution. But that could be a problem that creeps up on this team.
And it's funny because I've seen that become a conspiracy among fans, and it's kind of been a thing that has bubbled up in recent years as well, that it's Kyle purposefully did not throw the book at this team because he wants to save certain plays for the playoffs. And so he came in with this vanilla game plan. Is genius. He's thinking ahead in the chess move and all that. And I didn't think that was true when people were saying that about the Ravens game. It could very well be the case against this Commanders team, though, just because it's hey, we should be able to beat this team without having to try too hard. Let's just go out there, get this win, come out of it with not a lot of injuries or no injuries, and, that be it. That be the end of it. Because I think also this game was served as a, dusting off the shoulder a little bit after that Ravens game. He kind of just needed to build that back up. So let's talk about the fact, though, that the 49ers did get some help. They needed help in order to seal the number 1 seed in the NFC. Like you, Weston, I was kind of thinking, I didn't think it would happen this week. I was fully prepared for the 49ers to have to play the Rams in a must-win game for both of those teams to be able to seal whatever seeding they were playing for. I am so thankful. So thankful that is not the case. And it is all thanks to the Arizona Cardinals and the Cowboys as well, who beat the Lions, took care of business. But wow, what an upset for the Arizona Cardinals to go into Philadelphia. And I mean, Jonathan Gannon, man, Jonathan
Yeah.
Gannon revenge game. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's not a lot of bad blood there, but even so, they took care of business and they came out with the win. And it was really awesome to see the 49er players' reaction to, those plays at the end there, watching from like one little iPhone screen and then a little, box TV. I don't know who's responsible for that still being up in FedEx Field, but yeah, what an emotional, couple hours for the 49ers.
Yeah, it was awesome. Certainly unexpected. I know this is not I'm gonna do the who am I putting on notice really earlier in your show right now. I'm putting the Washington Commanders owners and whoever maintains the visiting locker room on notice. My little office I work out of here, I feel like is a nicer space and they'd have a better view of what they were watching. But really cool because of how unexpected it was. And like so unexpected that like, while I'm watching the 49ers game, it's also fantasy football championships, playoffs, things going on, right?
Yeah.
So got the computer up on the side and I'm monitoring that game and you see Philly pull out early. And then all of a sudden you see like they're Arizona creeping back into this. And like, I didn't even want to jinx it. So I'm not even saying anything, right? I'm not making a peep about it. I'm like, let me just see how this goes. I didn't even want to turn the game on after the 49ers game was ended and they still had some time left. Cause I'm like, they've been playing so well without me watching. Like, don't mess this up, Arizona. But I think what was really cool for me is hearing the players talk about it after the fact. And sometimes you forget about the journey of some of these players, right? Like hearing Trent Williams talk about like, it's a dream come true to get this first round bye and secure it, forgetting he's never experienced that in his NFL career, right? Arguably the greatest left tackle in the league has never experienced that. You hear Brock Purdy talking about, you dreamed about this as a kid, right? Your team was the one that secured the first round bye. And I just thought it brought everything like full circle for a team that gels so well together and that really has a ton of camaraderie in that locker room. It was pretty awesome to watch. Now, Steph, I'm a little bit more skeptical, right? I remember back to when we last won secured the first round bye against Seattle in Seattle on the final play of football game, essentially. And we went from either being the 1 seed or the 5 seed and how fortunes quickly changed. I'm a big believer in having to play as much meaningful football as you can as you get closer to the playoffs. And I don't mind the week off by any means. What I mind, and I tend to mind, is, hey, for some of these people, they're going to go 3 weeks without playing meaningful football, right? But where I hedge my bets a little bit, the names that I'm thinking of, Trent Williams probably gets a blow, right? Christian McCaffrey already knows going to get a blow. I have to imagine Bosa's going to get a blow. Probably Warner, maybe a couple other people, because you, of all people, pointed this out. You can't mathematically sit everybody, right? Some starters have to play. It's just the way it is. You're going to control their snaps, what positions you put them in. But some of those players that I expect to get that burn, they're not first timers in this league, right? Like I feel like they're well prepared. They're upper echelon type players that are going to get a little blow. It's just the team in general. When you take them and knock them off of that rhythm, you just want them playing their best ball possible going in without a ton of time between. That's where I like the concept of having to play for it in week 18 and then earning that week. But I'm not a dummy. I'm not naive. I know this is a tremendous opportunity for this team to get really, really healthy. And I also know that when they're healthy and fresh, we win 5 games to start the season. We lose 3, get the bye, come back, win 7 out of 8, 6 straight, right? Like, so you can't help but feel a little bit more confident about getting that time. But I don't think that, I what I love about what I'm hearing with these guys is not anybody saying like, hey, the job is done, the mission's accomplished, just that, hey, this is a really cool experience that most of them have never been a part of.
And there are, some guys, like you mentioned, like Trent, who hadn't been a part of it. 2019 was the last time that the 49ers had the number 1 seed. And there's still a good chunk of players from that team who are with the team today. So those guys can kind of, help set the stage a little bit to guys who haven't had that experience and lock in, right? Because the one disadvantage that could come from having the first round bye, as we know, is coming out of it rusty. And technically, the 49ers have a bye week and a half because they don't have to have all the starters play, or at least like finish the game against the Rams next week. So that's a fair concern. But I think the 49ers have certain players or certain guys who I trust for that to not be an issue. Christian McCaffrey, great example of that. I think he deserves that rest. He's going to get that rest, and I'd fully expect him to be full go, like not miss a beat. He's going to put his best foot forward out there when the 49ers play in the divisional round. Like, I don't have to worry about him. I think there's a few other guys on this team who would fall under that as well. There's also a couple of guys who I'd be like, and I'm not going to name them, but I'm thinking like they should probably play.
You're playing.
Yeah, like you should play, because I don't know if you should have like 2 weeks off. You know what I mean? No. So, and that's the balance that I think Kyle Shanahan has to find, right, in these next 2 weeks, make sure everyone's like, stays focused.
I love that Christian McCaffrey is part of this experience, because as somebody who's watched this game for a real long time, I see very few people that play with the level of urgency that man does, given his skill set and who he is and what he's accomplished in this league so far. So I think that is a really nice added piece that, in that downtime, like, I know we're saying they're not playing football, but they're going to be, at their HQ every day, right? Mm-hmm. Still getting their weights in, still getting their practice in, right? They're going to be around ball. But if I look around and I see people like Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey that don't want to squander this opportunity because this might be the only one that they get, I think people like that are going to keep that heightened urgency. And now I see the relationship that Trent and Debo have together, right? Like big brother, little brother. I feel like again, these are just all things that point them in the direction of like, guys, 1 seed's really, really cool, but we expected that. You know what I mean? That's not what we laced them up for this year and battled through, a couple rounds of adversity. And here we go. And the path is clear. The path is set. It's go do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And Weston, I'm glad that we're talking about a win again, because last week's 49K Player of the Week, voting wasn't really much of a vote, because there wasn't much to talk about as far as like who had good performances. This week a little bit easier, so I think I'm going to kick us off here.
Please do. All
right, and for those of you who are first timers watching this show, shout out Moon Man in the comments here. This segment, 49K Player of the Week, me and Weston nominate some players who had great performances, or what we thought were great performances worthy of being named 49K Player of the Week this week. So I'm going to start off with Elijah Mitchell. And I'm going to say, because first game back from a multi-week absence, and I know that we're all tired of Elijah Mitchell being hurt, but when he is healthy and he gets his opportunities, it's hard to deny why he continues to get those opportunities, right? Like, I think he's a great running back. He's trusted by Kyle Shanahan. You always have to have that in your back pocket if you want to be featured in this offense. And he had to play an expanded role on Sunday in his first game back, like I said, because Christian McCaffrey exited with his calf injury. By the way, Christian McCaffrey should be okay for the playoffs. It should be about a 1 week injury for him. He's not going to play against the Rams as expected. That is totally okay for McCaffrey. But anyway, back to Elijah Mitchell. He has 17 carries for 80 yards, 4.7 yards per attempt, a touchdown as well. I just liked it. I mean, he helped keep the chains moving in a game where I think the 49ers just, like I said, wanted to go in and get out and dominate time of possession, get the game over with pretty much. And I thought he played a big role in helping the 49ers win on Sunday.
Yeah, 100%. This is going to be the first name out of my mouth too. So I love it. If you gave me the floor stuff, he was flying right off the board. That being said, I know 49er fans, myself included, have been really frustrated with the availability of Elijah
That's
Mitchell.
fair.
But I think let's not forget in 2021, he was a huge part of the run, right? Like he was a huge part of it. Him and Debo were the offense throughout
Yeah.
the playoffs and getting to that point. Both played real big in Green Bay, and he just looked healthy, and I hope he is, right? Like, I mean, too often we hear on like Wednesday the following week, like, that knee again, right? Like is acting up. So hopefully not the case, but he just looked powerful. He looked strong, no nonsense, like through the gaps, always falling forward. And to your point, like in a game that just lacked pizzazz, right? And it was a game that they were kind of like, were handily winning by this point in the second half, did everything he was supposed to, kept the chains moving, kept the time of possession on our side, kept our defense fresh and off the field and away from mistakes. And most importantly, kept Christian McCaffrey on the sideline so that he can heal. Because I assure you, Christian McCaffrey probably spent many minutes lobbying for himself to get back out onto that field because that's just the type of guy that he is. But even he looked at it like, all right, we're okay here. Like that feels a little
Big
foolish.
Picture.
Yeah, but that was 2021 Elijah Mitchell's rookie year that we saw yesterday, and it was awesome. And hopefully that gives, if he can stay healthy, that gives the confidence when McCaffrey needs because he's gonna need it. Like he needs rest. Feel like you got a competent individual that you can put in there. I just feel for like Jordan Mason in these scenarios, right? Where he's kind of like, is it my turn yet? Like I can do those things too.
Child.
Yeah, you got time, young buck. Just hang around. You'll get those reps, I promise.
Exactly. Yeah, they called McCaffrey neurotic on the broadcast, which definitely, describes McCaffrey and how badly he wants to be out on the field at all times. But Elijah Mitchell is going to get another opportunity. Last week of the regular season against the Rams, he's going to be the workhorse. So hopefully he come out of that game completely healthy, but they're going to need to lean on him again. I have full trust he'll be able to do that. But Weston, who is your next nominee?
I'm going to put this person up because I've been hyper critical of them, and I tend not to be. So you will get your flowers when your flowers are due, in my opinion. So for me, this one's Dre Greenlaw. I've been, like I said, very critical of his play over the last few weeks. And honestly, and I'm just calling it what it is, for a defense that to me over the last 3 weeks or so just looks sluggish and looks slow and looks like they need a break. He felt like to me yesterday he was playing with like his hair on fire. He was all over the place, led the team in tackles. Most importantly, no stupid 15-yard, unnecessary roughness or penalties, especially in that first half where like it was just teetering on a balance right there. But I have also been critical of the linebackers and how they've been covering in this Steve Wilks defense. And it hasn't looked this year like it has in years past. And that's both Dre, that's Fred, that's everybody. But he actually had a 90.1 PFF cover grade yesterday. 7 targets, 5 receptions, but for 25 yards. As a linebacker, to me, that means you're keeping the ball in front of you. He was all over the field, just making plays. It's hard for me not to, like I said, he just to me stood out as somebody that looked healthy and looked fast when everybody else on the defensive side, for all intents and purposes, just feels like they're like sucking wind a little bit right now and need this bye week more than probably the offense does. Dre for me. I thought he played a heck of a game, a controlled game, a conservative game, and one that we definitely needed from him, and hopefully he can stack that go forward.
I was on the fence on having Greenlaw as one of my nominees. I decided against it ultimately, but not because he didn't have himself like a solid game. I mean, it was great to see him flying out there and getting to the ball as he often does. But I agree with you. I think the 49ers defense as a whole definitely needs this rest, man. Like, I think all the concerns that people are seeing, while it may be overreaction a bit from fans, I get what they're saying. I get what they mean, because we've come accustomed to a certain standard with this defense, and the 49ers currently aren't meeting that standard. So in that sense, I understand why people are like, we miss Eric Armstead. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Or like why is this defensive line not stopping the run? All this stuff. And so they're not as bad as people on Twitter would make them out to be. But as a whole, I think they definitely need that rest. But it was good to see Greenlaw, energetic and getting to the ball in this game. There wasn't a lot of missed tackles in this game from the defense as a whole, so definitely got to give credit to the whole defense for that. There were only 3, and I don't think Greenlaw was one of them. So yeah, he had himself a solid game in this one. Definitely a good nominee. I'm gonna stick on the defensive side for this, and I'm gonna actually say Diamador Lenore.
Yeah.
So if you look at how many yards he gave up in his coverage, you'd be like, Steph, like, why? He gave up 53 yards. That was on 2 catches. Like, that's not great. He was on coverage for McLaurin's 52-yard catch or 42-yard catch, which he just got beat on. McLaurin, a great wide receiver, often gets overlooked for his talent, but that he simply just got beat. I don't even fall in too much for that one. He had a pass breakup though. He had an interception, and he nearly had like 1 or 2 others in this game. Like he was itching to get to the football, and I think that's something that all the corners right now, Mooney Ward included, are really trying to focus on. That's something that you want your corners to really hone in on, especially going into the playoffs, because when you get those opportunities, man, that's going to help your team big time. And I just like what I've seen from these corners. I like what I've been seeing from Lenore, and I just had to nominate him for his performance, even though like the numbers wouldn't necessarily show it with the yardage given up, but I thought he had a really good game.
Yeah, the numbers are skewed by one play, right? By an all-world wide receiver. You know what I mean? And this is still an NFL quarterback. You don't get pressure. You give them time. Most quarterbacks are going to pick you apart in the league, and the guy made a hell of a throw, a hell of a play, and a hell of a catch. Where the corner is always at the disadvantage, especially running that pattern out of the slot. But we've been talking about Diamador week after week after week on this show. I mean, the man is playing at a Pro Bowl level. I would say Charvarius is playing at an all-pro level. Diamador Lenore is playing at a Pro Bowl level. And tell me what's wrong with that when your 2 corners are, you know what I mean? Like, what's wrong with that for what was supposed to be the weakest link of this defense? I think has been the strength right now. It's crazy. I didn't have Demo. I had Charvarius. So we'll just talk about them in the same sentence, right? Like, saw the same things you did. Charvarius, what do you have? 3 targets, gave up 2 catches for like a combined 4 yards. He had a pick in a very opportune spot. One of the things that I loved about it was just like, this is going to sound like so technical football, and I apologize, but his technique was so sound on that interception. Keep in mind, they were going in, right? They were going in to score Washington at this point, and corner didn't backpedal at all. He stayed, he held his ground. He stayed right outside that line and just stepped up and was in the route of the wide receiver. Like, that's why you're taught that. And it's so awesome to see guys who are playing such fantastic ball not deviate from the plan, right? Not deviate from the assignment and deviate from your fundamentals. I don't even I guess that's my nomination. I'm going right from your Demo to Charvarius Ward, but in the same breath, I think they're both playing the same brand of football.
Yep.
And it's puzzling defenses because it's like, now what do you do? Maybe this is what's putting the stress on the linebackers, because the only home that the other team's receiving core and pass game can find is over the middle right now, because the outside seems to be, I don't want to say locked down, but not an ideal, scenario for opposing.
That's crazy. That's crazy because it was the opposite last year, right?
Yeah.
Like, couldn't get anything over the middle on this team, anything intermediate going on this team, but they struggled on the outside. Now, what do they have? Strength on the outside. And, even if they give up some catches, like you said, Mooney Ward allowed 2 catches, he was targeted 3 times, allowed 2 catches. And if I asked you, without you telling me, like if I asked you, how many yards do you think he allowed on 2 catches? Just 4 yards total. Like, that's crazy, right?
Crazy.
So, yeah, I mean, I think both corners are doing their thing. I think that's something that's welcome. The 49ers need that. I think, like, in a lot of the concern right now with the defense, I think is coming from the defensive line, and I think that's going to be somewhat resolved. Maybe not all of it, but somewhat resolved, hopefully, by Eric Armstead, um, especially on run D. So
Yep.
I think if the 49ers are full strength, they got everyone healthy, and they have these two corners playing the way they are, and it just feels like both of those guys are on an upwards trajectory right now, right? So if
Yeah,
they keep
absolutely.
playing at that level, I feel really good about the defense. I don't know about you, but I feel really great about it.
Yeah,
But
it needs rest and
yes,
AA back. You know what I mean? And
yes,
I think I'd love to see the Sebastian Joseph Day get a little bit more ingrained in the defense and get some plays. I think that'll help with some of the problems with allowing the rush up the middle. But we'll see. But I think we're going to say this for the next 3 weeks, Steph, that the bye week, or the first round bye is starting to feel more and more opportune to get the defense, ready for this playoff push.
yeah, I think so. I think right now, like, the defense is just surviving,
Yeah,
which the way that, like, the offense has played most of the season, like, they can do that. But I think they're gonna lock in for the playoffs. They're going to. They're gonna need to, right? Is what I mean. So
have to. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's hopefully what we'll see. And Patel in the comments says, "Is there an update with Eric? Either way, SF poised to go to Vegas." I mean, I think the latest update that we got from Kyle Shanahan was just that he's not going to play next week, but he has a probably good chance to go after that. So
No.
once the playoffs start, because now there's several weeks, or sorry, yeah, a couple weeks for guys to get healthy. So I'm trying to find the official report, but yeah, I'm trying to find the transcript. Kyle said, "quote Eric Armstead with his foot and knee will continue to rest him, get him ready for the playoffs." End quote. That's what he said about Eric. So
Yeah.
that's vague. We would like something a little more specific, a little more concrete, but I think, Armstead's working his way back and trying so hard to get ready for the playoffs. So that I completely would expect him to be ready to go for the divisional round.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 3.5 weeks, right, until that game. He's not a guy who has to practice to get on the field. You'd like to see him out there working out on the sideline, at least suited up, a couple days before for the game. But I think for him, it's just pain tolerance at this point, and it's more the foot than it is the knee. And it's can you run on it? Can you walk on it? And I'm sure they have an open line of communication with him. Like, Eric, don't BS us. Like, if you can't be you, I need to know, because this is the playoffs and I need a body there, right? Like, if this was like week 5 or 6, well, give it a go. See how you can manage the pain. But in this instance, no. But I would expect the competitor that he is, we will see him suited up for the divisional round of the playoffs.
I would fully expect that as well. I mean, so not too worried about the defense right now. But I'm gonna go ahead and nominate my
Yeah.
next nominee for 49K Player of the Week. It's Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, buddy.
7
Yeah, buddy.
catches, 114 yards. Congrats to him, because he's now gone over not just 1,000 yards, right? 1,300 yards on the season. That's big for him. This season, I think he's at like 18 point something yards per reception. On Sunday, he had 16.3 yards per reception. He had that touchdown. It was Aiyuk's 7th 100-plus yard game this season, which tied him with Jerry Rice for the 3rd most in a season in franchise history. Jerry Rice did that in 1990. So, I mean, that's big for Brandon Aiyuk. I know it's now started this whole conversation of he's going to be a Chief next year, because the Chiefs need some wide receiver help. But basically what people are saying is Brandon Ayuk's going to get that bag.
Yes, he
And
is.
we're not so sure that the 49ers going to be able to afford him. I'll tell you right now, Weston, I think the 49ers can and will
You make this
afford him.
happen.
They're gonna give him that bag,
You
and he absolutely deserves it.
you make this happen because you have one more full guaranteed, basically two full guaranteed years of Brock Purdy costing you nothing, right? Like, essentially nothing. So you make this happen, because we all know the minute the quarterback gets paid, you can't pay everybody, and that window shuts real fast. unless this guy really is MVP conversation year after year after year. It's just what it is. You make this happen. You don't get cute. They will. They'll drag it into August like they always freaking do here. We're all can't wait because
We're gonna
you and
be
I are going to talk about
stressed.
it all off season. So
Yeah, we're
like
gonna
it'll
be
give us
stressed
some
about
content,
it.
but you make this happen. You figure this out. This is more. This to me, this is actually more important than Debo that this gets done because Brock plays a different brand. Brock quarterbacks a different offense, right? He doesn't need, in my opinion, we don't need all the gimmicks. You need guys that run routes, guys that are dependable, guys that catch the ball, guys that block like SOBs with their hair on fire for a Kyle Shanahan running game. And Brandon Aiyuk is all of those things. And he doesn't say a word about it. Just goes out there and stands on his business week after week after week after week. You pay that man, period, point blank. I don't know what else you're gonna do. What are you gonna do? You're gonna let this guy go play in the NFC against you? A guy like that with that chip on his shoulder, he's gonna make you pay for it for the next 10 years.
Yeah, no. I mean, a lot of people forget to early in the season, the 49ers freed up like what 40 million in cap space. They've barely tapped into that as the season has gone on.
Road, right? Like you just extend, kick. You know what I mean? And you let the next coach worry about it when Kyle walks away from his contract. Simple equation.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're going to talk about Aiyuk and his contract, how much he's going to get like all throughout the off season. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but you know, for the sake of this week, he is one of my candidates for 49K player of the week because I thought he had a great week. I think he helped Brock Purdy, you know, bounce back the way he did. He's just been so reliable. He was reliable again on Sunday. Yeah, man. Brandon Aiyuk is him.
100%. And he's been a model of consistency all season long, you know, which is weird because you haven't seen that from a 49er wide receiver in quite some time. Remember like the 11, 12, like 13 playoff pushes and you're like, no wide receiver caught a ball in this game. It was like all Vernon Davis. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's crazy. It's true.
It's been a while to see that level of, you know, a 1,300 yard wide receiver. That's not George Kittle in 2018 when it didn't matter. Aiyuk is 100% him. I got one more.
All right.
I'm going to go Brock.
Let's go.
You know, let's not sleep on the man. Like, if anybody had every excuse in the world to crumble, it was this guy, 24 years old. Like, you know, was he going to turn into a pumpkin at midnight based on like the Baltimore game? You don't know how that was going to go.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he did anything glamorous. And I definitely think the game plan early in this was scaled back to build confidence a little bit on certain throws. But then there's two plays to me that I said, that is who Brock Purdy really wants to be and who he really is when you take the leash off him and when he's feeling himself. Obviously, and they're actually both to Brandon Aiyuk. One of them was the touchdown to Brandon Aiyuk on the scramble play, right? Where you're pointing and you're like, oh God, where's this ball going to wind up right now? Yeah. Put it out of the back of the end zone. Like, that's all I'm thinking in my mind, you know? But you're like, my God, cool, calm, collected, can get out of there. Plenty of time, set his feet, you know, tell your receiver where to go. And there was another one to Aiyuk down the right sideline, just in stride ball. Listen, I know they were playing with third, fourth, and fifth string corners, right? This is not about like the wide receiver cooking the DB. The DB was in his hip, right? It was just where the ball was placed with little separation between where only the wide receiver can make a play. And we've seen him do that all year. You know, 22 for 28, averaged 8.2 per. You know, that's part of the game plan because that's low for him. What also wasn't a ton of yak in this game. 2 touchdowns, 88.2 QBR, 124 and change on the rating. And the most important stat of coming off of a 4 interception game is zero turnovers from Brock. This game, for me, again, people are like 27-10, or when you really look at it, 13-10 at halftime, like whatever you want to get upset about. This game was always about get right. It was always about get right, get a W, and let's inject some confidence back into number 13. And He carried himself accordingly. He felt humbled in the beginning of the game. Even when he made big plays, it wasn't over celebration because he's seen how the other shoe dropped. Brock, you can't talk about this W and not talk about, just a well, I'm not going to say managed, a well-handled game plan from number 13 and a lot of good execute. I think I saw like one truly like errant throw that I was like, oh shit, that might have been intercepted. And it was like on one to Debo, like a little bit later in the game. But by then the game was kind of out of hand.
Yeah. Yeah, he was also my last nominee for this week. And yeah, I mean, just because I agree with you, it wasn't like glamorous or anything like that, but we needed a bounce back performance from him. And I think we got it. I thought we saw from Brock this week, it was not him trying to do too much. He wasn't trying to force the issue. I think he was taking what the defense was giving him. It kind of went back to basics a little bit. We also saw him like escape the pocket, as you mentioned, extending plays, which was something that maybe like he wasn't doing as much in recent weeks, right? Like, and that's part of kind of taking what the defense gives you instead of, no, I gotta find the big play. It's got to be here somewhere. Let me just keep looking. And maybe you stay in the pocket too long when sometimes, like, I think Brock's still finding that balance between I'm going to make this big play and I got to just like get out of the pocket and see what I can do.
Yeah.
I think he's still finding that balance. I think he's finding the balance on a lot of things. And he kind of admitted that, last week when he spoke with the media, which I loved from him, by the way, like just how candid and transparent he was and self-reflective he was. But yeah, I think we saw like a few times in this game how him just extending plays was able to benefit the offense. That, the touchdown to Aiyuk, as you mentioned, was a great example of that. I hope I was dying to see the all 22 because I'm like, it's probably going to be even better to watch both at the same time, seeing how Brock was able to direct in the opposite way. I just love that. So I thought it was a great bounce back performance from Brock. Like I said, getting back to the basics, getting back to building that confidence, what made him so great in the first place. And and congrats to him because not only is he over 4,200 passing yards, he's now the franchise leading passer in yards in a season. And that's crazy. That's crazy that it took that long because it doesn't even seem like 4,200 is that much in like the grand scheme of things, especially the way the NFL is these days.
Yep.
But Brock Purdy definitely deserves that. I think he's well on his way to beating a number of franchise records.
It is actually really, and congratulations to him, right? Like in a very storied franchise like the San Francisco 49ers to now own another record of theirs, right? And this one's a full season record, so somebody's got to match that production. But you think back on like 5 Lombardi trophies, etc., names like Joe Montana, Steve Young, Jerry Rice, man. Terrell Owens,
ain't
right?
No scrubs.
Yeah, like I mean, these are Hall of Famers, right? Like, and you're like, wait a minute. They only 4,000 yards like in a season, and like and when, let's not forget when Montana was playing, Marino was slanging that thing around for $5,000 every year, right? So like, don't tell me it was a different style of game. When the 49ers were winning, it was a different balance of game, right? Like they still had 1,000-yard rushers and 4,000-yard passers, all just in that thing, right? If you go looking back at all those seasons when it happened. Outside of the Garcia one, I mean, which was still a playoff run season, there was usually a Super Bowl attached to the back half of that particular season. So congratulations to him, but it was still like shocking for somebody who's been following this team as long as I have. Like, God, that I'm not downplaying the accomplishment. Right. I'm just saying, like, I was more shocked that like that's it. Like that was the number,
right.
Like it didn't feel like it was that. I forget who it was, but somebody put it on Twitter today. That it might have been Jesse Naylor actually. That
I think it was.
He's probably going to break his own record multiple times, right? Like, and it's like, okay, that's starting to make a little more sense to me.
And I think too, like we have to remember the 49ers weren't even like they were the lowest or one of the lowest teams as far as like their passing attempts. Brock Purdy, I think, was in like the 20-something range. The reason that Brock Purdy himself is different than the team is because, well, in the fourth quarter, you get a lot of Sam Darnold when there's blowouts. So that takes
Also
into
true.
account the team passing attempts. But still, Brock Purdy like hasn't even thrown that much. So yeah, that helps put it into perspective as well, that what Purdy did is in fact impressive, even though 4,200 yards in a season for a quarterback in 2023, 2024, not that crazy. So yeah.
You know what's crazy for me, Stefan, or what I'm happy about is that he actually did this in 16 games, not the
Yes.
17th game, because
Yeah.
the Purdy haters would be full steam ahead saying he had one extra game. You know how this goes, right? You've been doing this long enough to know how just another opportunity to knock the guy down a notch, right? Or off his
Exactly.
pedestal. And now they can't. Now nobody can take away the production of the season from him. And you can insert any word you want. Dink and dunk, game manager, risk taker, does not matter. The record's his. It's his, and nobody can take that away from him.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys. Well, for those of you live tuned in with us, whether you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, like I said, this is a part of the show where we vote for 49K Player of the Week. So me and Weston gave you guys some of our nominees, our candidates here, and they are Elijah Mitchell, Dre Greenlaw, Diamador Lenore, Charvarius Ward, Brandon Aiyuk, and Brock Purdy. Some of you guys have already voted. Thank you for that. If you have not, drop your vote in the comments. We want to know who you think is 49K Player of the Week for Week 17. Now, in the meantime, Weston, do you have any players to put on notice for this week?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And it's hard because I want to call out the entire defensive line right now. This just felt like a game. This is a 1 week thing for me, and I am hoping
Okay.
that the bye week and the additional rest for some of the bigger names will cure this woe. But for a guy who was playing quarterback, who's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL, and they have third string left tackles and right tackles out against the best defensive line in the NFL, and you can't get home, I just have an issue with that. Like, I forget the 10 points, whatever, that you gave up. Great. Like, I know it was a clean slate in the second half. Like, this should have been Chase Young and Nick Bosa determining
Right.
who had more sacks, right? No, I had 4. No, that was my half sack. That wasn't your half sack. Like, they just didn't get home. And it's not like Washington, now granted, in the second half, they didn't have the ball a whole lot either. So there wasn't a lot of like the eat opportunities, but they weren't calling 3-step drop and getting that ball right out. I mean, they were 5-7 step, like a traditional, playbook. It was just a little disheartening. Felt like it should have been a layup, and I feel like more often than not, I'm seeing this defensive line throughout the season play down to the competition. Like, they play better against the better team, in my opinion, like take Lamar last week. I thought they were in the backfield all darn game, you know what I mean? Against a far better offensive line. And this, it felt like they took the week off, if I'm being real honest.
That's fair. Like, okay, so when I watched the game, I was like, it felt like Nick Bosa had at least 1 sack, and I was like, yeah, they had a sack, but no, it wasn't a sack.
No, it wasn't
He
sack.
had 2 tackles for loss. There was a couple of tackles for losses in this game, but no sacks. I mean, it was clear that part of the Commanders' game plan for Sam Howell was just get the ball out quickly.
Yep.
So that seemed to work in most cases, but there were some cases where they just got close. And it felt, Weston, a lot like it did right before the bye week.
Yeah, it sure
right?
did.
Where they were getting very close,
Yep.
and you're like, they're getting pressures, guys. They're just not turning into sacks, right? And so, again, maybe that goes back to our conversation of, is it rest that this team needs? Are they tired, right? Is that extra 1-2 inches to get that sack? Is that all they need these next couple weeks of rest to help them get there? I don't know. I hope so. I really do hope so. But I agree with, yeah, it better be.
We're in
But
trouble.
I agree with you. I think it's been a little disappointing what we've seen from the defensive line. And I put out a tweet a couple days ago, And I kind of just gave people some stats of Chase Young's stats before he was traded to the 49ers, what he did with the Commanders in the 7 games that he played, and then in the 7 games that he's played since the trade with the 49ers.
No.
And one of the things was like he's played 40% less snaps with the 49ers. I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's something because there's something maybe they don't like Chase Young as much as maybe we would have hoped. I don't know. Basically, I asked people, what do you think of the trade? And the responses were like everywhere, literally everywhere. They were all over the map. It was like, yes, he's been great. Like Nick Bosa since then has gotten, X many sacks. And then there were other people who were like, no, like I'm disappointed and he hasn't really done much. I don't think they re-sign him. And then other people are like, they definitely need to re-sign him, get him to an extension this offseason. And then there's people who like, kind of what you're saying, like, no, like still kind of disappointed with, the defensive line and the way they've been playing. Like with all the stars that they have, you expect a little bit more. And so I wholeheartedly agree with you, Weston. And I'm also wholeheartedly hoping that the rest is going to be the answer to this defensive line and getting home. Because then at that point, you just need to win 3 more games, right? Like, come on, could you guys just like get it together and get to the quarterback in 3 games? That's all we're asking, right?
We'll be much more tolerable in the offseason, I promise, if we can get this.
Yeah, because that happens, right?
Yeah. I said that to my in-laws the other day. I was like, listen, if they win 1, you won't hear a peep out of me. And they're like, bullshit. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. You're probably
so
right.
True. So
can we shout out Kristen Juszczyk by the way? Did you catch this part of the game? And
let's do it. Let's give her flowers.
Flowers.
Please.
This is what I was gonna say. We have to have a flowers moment. Kristen Juszczyk made the most awesome puffy vest that Debo was rocking, all about Brock Purdy, MVP. I want to know where we can put it on Etsy or whatever it is that we can find it, Kristen. I will order that tomorrow, like hands down. I will wear it to work. No questions asked. Just awesome. But I know we're being like a little facetious and we're having some fun here. But to me, this just also shows like this team believes in this kid. This is not just like this. There it is. Like, this is not just conjecture. Like, they actually, you want to know how they believe it? Debo's talking to Kyle Juszczyk, and Kyle's talking to Kristen, and Kristen's designing, and Debo's wearing, and Trent and Debo are behind Shanahan. Brock Purdy. Like, they love this kid. They love this kid, and I don't think they've felt that way about any quarterback since this has been the locker room move of the team. But I just think this is the most obvious example of that, made by your teammate's wife, and you're rocking it down, which has become a runway show, right? Like, these players entering the stadium, it's week after week, who's one up in the next person, or who's looks like they've shopped at Kohl's versus who's got their $25,000 Louis Vuitton suit on, like, and Debo rocks that. Like, unbelievable. Kristen Juszczyk, you are queen for that move for sure. Yeah, I hope that's her first name, by the way. I don't know if I'm making that up.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Kristen, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I mean, that's just awesome. In a week after Brock Purdy, struggles with the 4 interceptions, and you come out and you just rally behind him and you tell him, like, I literally have your back. Literally. I thought that was a really cool gesture from Debo, and he couldn't have done it without Kristen Juszczyk. So shout out to her. She posts on her Instagram, like she posts really great stuff that she creates, like everything she wears for game day, she hand makes herself. So yeah, awesome. Shout out to her. But Weston, do you have any, who's your vote for 49K player of the week of week 17?
I gotta go Elijah Mitchell. I couldn't wait I'm so glad you went first and you came out and said it, but for me, it's got to be Elijah Mitchell. It was just eerily reminiscent of the 2021 version of him, and that's going to be really important go forward. Because he's going to play next week, right? So maybe even he just gets a few more carries in that divisional round. because he will be in the flow of game where McCaffrey's getting rest. Like it's going to be valuable. And it looked really good, really clean at an opportune time.
Yeah, I love it. I'm gonna go with Brandon Aiyuk. I think his performance was noteworthy for me. This was a tough one. You love when it's tough, right? Again, love when it's a win and there's a lot of tough decisions to make for 49K Player of the Week. But I'm tallying up the votes here. Unless we get any last minute votes in the comments, Brock Purdy is our Week 17 49K Player of the Week. He got 4 votes. Mooney Ward and Elijah Mitchell tied for second place, so they got a lot of love too. And then Aiyuk had 2 votes. But yeah, I mean, awesome week. I know, next week there's going to be a lot of discussion about that game and what the 49ers do. Do you just let the Rams win and all that? I've already seen, people in the comments tee off on that subject. Something that I'll definitely be discussing throughout this week. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you like this video if you have not yet. And if you want to know when I go live, make sure you hit that notification bell as well. Not just for my channel, but for Weston's as well. We're Talking Football podcast is where you can find Weston. Is that like the actual URL? YouTube.
Yeah, that's the URL.
Okay.
It will change in short time, but that's where you find us for now. I've been doing a lot with you, Steph, but I agree. Most importantly, you need to be subscribed to the 49 Carats podcast channel. Steph kills it all week. Such a great variety of guests and difference of opinions. It's really, really awesome. It's like, I don't know. I don't have a better word than like must-see TV, because that's how I'm watching it through my TV. She does a hell of a job, and she busts her ass for all of you guys out there. So please pay her dues and her respect.
Well, Weston, I appreciate you, always joining me on these 49K Player of the Week shows, one of my favorite shows of the week. And hopefully next week will probably be an interesting one too. Maybe we'll have some names of some guys who don't get a lot of snaps usually, but maybe they'll have some great games. That's what it's all about, right? In the last week of the regular season, when you have clinched the #1 seed. But for now, folks, Happy New Year once again. Have a good rest of your Monday night. Peace.